to Asian American Life. I'm Ernabel Demillo. This month, we're coming to you from the New York Historical Society, where they're featuring the Chinese American Exclusion Inclusion exhibit, chronicling the Chinese American experience from the 18th century to today. Let's take a look.
For Bronx-born Amy Chin, this exhibit is personal.
Down here is actually a suitcase that my father brought with him when he immigrated to this country.
The Chin's family journey from China 3 generations ago is one of the more popular attractions in this exhibit. Here, museum goers may find a familiar story.
Now, most people, when they think about the typical American family, doesn't picture a Chinese American family living in the back of laundry in the Bronx. But our family struggles are very similar to the struggles of many other Americans. And I think that it really touches people on many different levels. Usually you go into a museum and you hear stories about famous people who did great deeds or conquered worlds, but how often do you go into a museum and you see an exhibit about somebody whose family in some ways may be similar to yours?
Her story is just part of the larger exhibit, the first of its kind here at the museum, exploring the long history of China and the Chinese in New York and the United States. It starts with the first trading ships from China, to the stories of early immigrants who came to New York on the railroads and opened small shops and businesses. Visitors will also learn, maybe for the first time, that the Chinese were banned from coming into the U.S.
The reason why I was so intent on mounting an exhibition on the history of Chinese in America is because so little is known about this history. So that most of our visitors have no idea that between 1882 and World War II, Chinese were excluded. There were some who could continue to come. There were exceptions, but those exceptions were really, really severely limited.
The Chinese Exclusion Act, passed in 1882, barred most Chinese from coming to America, the only legislation of its kind ever passed in the U.S. It was repealed in 1942.
It's hard for many Americans to begin to imagine that for such a long period of time, Chinese were forbidden to come to this country. It helps visitors understand something about the ways in which we have thought about immigration. And I think that that is something that provokes every visitor.
But it was this dusty old book that first caught her eye and was the inspiration for the exhibit.
Because of the Chinese exclusion laws, many of the Chinese coming in through immigration were heavily interviewed, and they were asked very, very minute details of their family and their family life back in China. So these coaching books were often prepared so that you can study them and your answers would be consistent with your brothers or sisters or your parents who had come through, or sometimes the immigration officials would compare your answers to neighbors who may have come through that same immigration station 20 or 30 years earlier. And if your answer deviated, even in the slightest bit, it could be cause for you to be deported.
A small piece of the Chin family history now playing a larger role in an immigrant group's important history.
I'm Paul Lin. Mayor de Blasio has done much to reflect the diversity of New York in his own administration. That's what I hear from 2 Asian American commissioners. They're part of a South Asian contingent that's in a position to influence the lives of immigrants and other Asian Americans in New York.
We need people who share our progressive values related to the future of this city.
In the DeBlasio administration, that increasingly has meant more Asian Americans, including Chinese Americans Bill Chong and Vanessa Leong, and a number of Filipino Americans, Maria Torres Springer, Carmelyn Malalis, and Minerva Tantoko, and appointees of South Asian descent, Dr. Ramanathan Raju, Mahen Gunaratna, Meenakshi Srinivasan, and 2 commissioners with whom I had an opportunity to speak, Nisha Agarwal at the Office of Immigrant Affairs and Mira Zoshi at the Taxi and Limousine Commission. While Nisha is the mayor's choice for Commissioner of Immigrant Affairs, she's also the daughter of Indian immigrants, connecting her with the people she serves. Over at the Taxi and Limousine Commission, Mira Zoshi presides. She'd earlier been TLC's general counsel, but it's her background, half Indian and half English, that's helped her with her community. Almost 40% of taxi drivers are from South Asia, including India, Bangladesh, and Pakistan. The appointments of both Mira and Nisha got the attention of South Asians both in New York and overseas.
Although I had sent some articles to my uncles, by the time they got them, they were sending me articles that had appeared in Indian press. For some reason, taxi and India go very well together, and New York on top of it. So when the news came out and all three of those notions were in one article, it was picked up in a lot of publications.
And what does it say to you that the mayor's valuing South Asians and putting people in positions of power to do something?
I think it underscores a basic tenet about how to be a good public servant, and that is to understand your audience and to put someone in power who can relate to some of the struggles that people that they regulate in my position are going through.
The struggle of inclusion is something Nisha Agarwal faced growing up in parts of the U.S. where there were few families of Indian descent, like Fayetteville, New York, some 4.5 hours north of New York City.
And in some ways that was really challenging, right? There was this sort of obvious things that you hear about in terms of discrimination, sort of small level, sometimes larger scale, and that was challenging at times. But I think the kind of one of the upshots of it is it really shaped my political consciousness. It shaped my values about what I want to do in my life.
Like social justice and nonviolent activism inspired by Mahatma Gandhi.
My grandfather marched with Gandhi, was sort of brought into the freedom struggle by his brother, and I think that experience really shaped him, which then it influenced how he raised my mom, and then subsequently sort of influenced how my parents raised me. And so I think that's sort of been something that's moved through the generations in our family, and part of the reason why I've had a lot of support from my family and what I've chosen to do in life.
Mira Zoshi grew up the daughter of Hindu and Roman Catholic parents in West Philadelphia. Few South Asians there, but full of diversity. In New York City, such multiculturalism is pretty common these days, Asian American households included, and the city has seen huge increases in numbers for Asians and Asian Americans. No wonder representation in New York City government has likewise blossomed in recent years. The Asian American population has doubled in size since 1990, the fastest growing group in New York. More than 1 million Asian Americans make their home here. Almost 13% of the city's population is Asian American. And that potentially could grow by the next census, especially with such a strong advocate in the mayor's office. In 2014, Commissioner Agarwal pushed for better language access for immigrants seeking health care. In 2015, the big news will be New York's launch of its municipal ID card. It could help many undocumented immigrants with basic needs. Some may be able to get a bank account for the first time ever. Over at the TLC, Commissioner Zoshi has focused on safety since her first month on the job, enforcing the mayor's Vision Zero plan, slowing down for-hire vehicles and cracking down on traffic violations. That's after a string of pedestrian fatalities and accidents.
For the TLC, that meant going through a rulemaking process to amend our rules to make sure that we are getting reckless drivers off the streets quicker, and also honoring the drivers that have excellent safety records. So we had our first safety honor roll ceremony where over 250 drivers were honored for having a 5-year spotless record.
Also big in 2014 for Commissioner Zoshi, ramping up wheelchair accessibility in taxi cabs and other for-hire vehicles.
And that means that by 2016, 50% of the yellow taxi fleet will be accessible, and a large percentage, almost 50% of the green taxi fleet will also be accessible. And we hit some real major benchmarks. I think it's 200,000 rides on our accessible dispatch program, which is an app or phone-based system which allows the wheelchair passenger to connect with an accessible vehicle.
Making strides in 2014 and big plans ahead for Asian American commissioners in the DeBlasio administration. I'm Paul Lin for Asian American Life.
I'm Tinabeth Piña. Life in our multicultural world constantly highlights the contrasts between us. We're white, we're black, we're Hispanic, we're Asian, we're rich, we're poor. The story I'm about to tell you is fraught with contrasts and controversy. It brings together different cultures and different economic realities in the most basic of ways and around the most important issue there is, the gift of life.
બાળક મારા પેટમાં રહ્યું છતાંય મારા જેવું નથી કે નથી અમારા કોઈ જેવું અહીંના ઇન્ડિયા જેવું એ બાળક એમના જેવું છે મારી જે બેબી છે એ સેમ એના પપ્પા જેવી છે અને છોકરો છે એની મમ્મી પર પડે છે.
These women are paid surrogates for infertile couples who travel to India from all over the world to have a baby. Since 2002, commercial surrogacy has been legal in India and is one of only a handful of countries, including Russia, Thailand, and the Ukraine, where women can be paid to carry someone else's genetic child.
India is really ahead of the United States in terms of making surrogacy legal and well-regulated and affordable for the vast majority of people who want to have a baby. Hiring a surrogate is such a strange idea for most people anyway, and then traveling all the way to India to have a baby is even stranger. So if you have a healthcare system that you're comfortable with and people who speak English, it makes everything much, much easier, and it makes you feel safer and more comfortable about having a baby there.
Leslie documented Arizona couple Rhonda and Jerry Weil in her book, The Baby Chase. The pair had their first child in 2009 via an Indian surrogate and Indian egg donor, and a set of twins in 2011 through another Indian surrogate and egg donor.
Rhonda and Jerry have had a wonderful experience with surrogacy. They have had 3 children born via 2 surrogates in India. There is no way that they could have afforded having surrogate babies in the United States. They couldn't have come up with $100,000 for 1 baby, much less $300,000 for 3. It really was the difference between having 0 babies and being able to have the family they always dreamed of.
Typically speaking, if you wanted to get a surrogate in the US, it costs about $100,000 plus the IVF costs and all that. So you're looking at about a $150,000 budget. We provide the same surrogates in India for about $35,000. So suddenly, an overseas surrogate is a great low-cost option.
That affordability also attracted Lisa and Brian Switzer, who are featured in the documentary Made in India. The surrogacy route was a perfect option for them since Lisa isn't medically able to have children.
We don't really have the luxury of waiting or the luxury of seeing if there's other alternatives. This is something this is our one and final shot.
The Switzers traveled to India, underwent in vitro fertilization, and had their embryo transferred into a surrogate at the Rotunda Clinic, one of more than 3,000 clinics in India that employ surrogates to carry babies to term. Most people can find these clinics by just Googling Indian surrogates online, but there are providers in the U.S., like Indian Egg Donors, Inc., which match couples with surrogacy clinics in India.
How are the surrogates chosen?
They're usually hefty village women who are with great physiques, who have had at least 1 child and who are in their 20s. Now what we do with them is we screen them, make sure they're okay, and if they check out fine, they carry the embryos. After they're implanted and they get pregnant and we say, hurrah, we are so happy, they then go and live in a home which is almost like a college dormitory with about 20 or 30 other surrogates in different stages, and they get paid their meals, and they have a nurse and a manager watching over them.
We were able to look after them better than you would hear. Here, there's no control over them. If they become pregnant, you have no control over what they are eating or if they are smoking. We have caretakers for their children because they are of a certain age group, so they have children. We have a nutritionist looking after their diet. We have an ambulance standby to take them for their checkups.
What makes an Indian woman want to become a surrogate?
Usually it is economic need. They may want to have a house of their own, or they may want to invest in the education of their children.
They get paid a lot of money for doing it, which by Indian standards may be 2 years' salary. and then they use that money, and many of them put up new homes for themselves, or they put up a new roof, they feed their families, and many of them become serial surrogates.
मतलब सब कुछ ठीक है यहाँ पे, जो मुझे भी फ़ायदा मिल रहा है यहाँ से अपनी बेटी की भविष्य के लिए, और आगे मेरी थ्रू किसी और को भी बच्चा मिल रहा है, मुझे उस बात की भी बहुत खुशी है जो मैं किसी को.
India is a very paternalistic country where women are fed, educated, and cared for last, always behind the boys in their family and their community. So Indian women have very limited opportunities to make money, to make any kind of living. And surrogacy is one of the few things that men cannot do. And so it's a unique, and in many, under the ideal circumstances, a wonderful transformational opportunity for Indian women.
Do you think being a surrogate is empowering for these women in India?
I do. There's no doubt that being a surrogate is empowering, at least for the women who I talk to who are not coerced into doing it. They go from being just kind of a servant in their families to being the hero of their family and often their entire community.
Surrogates can earn anywhere from $2,000 to $9,000 and are paid extra for cesarean and multiple births. They are put through a thorough screening process for physical and psychological health.
जब बच्चा पैदा होगा तो वो बच्चा आपका नहीं है, वो बच्चा किसी और का है, ठीक है? तो आपको वो बच्चा उनको वापस करना है, ठीक है?
The surrogate knows that she has to give the baby away. And plus they have psychological evaluation being done of the surrogate there. They have counseling through the pregnancy so that she's ready to give the baby away, you know, like during delivery, and there is no danger of her not wanting to give it away. Also the government, because the contract she signs, one of the things, the stipulations is that she has no right over the baby. From the time she conceives the baby, it belongs to the intended parent. It doesn't belong to the woman carrying the baby.
આપીને મને ઘણો આનંદ થયો છે કે મેં બે બાળકોને જન્મ આપ્યો છે અને એમને ગિફ્ટ કરીશ એમ. પણ મારો જીવ તો આમ તો આપણે લાગણી તો થાય જ, પણ આપણે પહેલાથી નક્કી કર્યું છે એટલે આપી દેવા જ પડશે.
According to a World Bank report, the commercial surrogacy industry in India will reach $2.5 billion by the year 2020, and laws have been passed to regulate the industry. They also require that surrogates be between 21 and 35 years old. Nevertheless, critics point out that not enough has been done for the surrogates themselves.
They are the ones who are maximum exploited in this whole process of offering themselves to produce a child for someone who's childless and supposed to be a very noble idea and noble cause. But they are not being, in many cases, they do not know what kind of a contract gets signed, how much money is promised, and how much money actually gets delivered.
The contract that we signed with Planet Hospital was broken down into how much everybody would be paid. Is that what got done? I don't know.
There is a legislation, it should talk about respecting surrogates' rights, which is very shallow in the present form.
What happens to the surrogates after they've given birth? And in the United States, where we have a very good healthcare system, it's not such a big issue. But in India, it's a very big issue. The surrogates get outstanding medical care when a wealthy intended parent is paying the bill. But what if she has complications 4 or 6 months later? The surrogate is really on her own after that. Long-term care for the surrogates needs to be part of the regulation, but at this stage it is not.
To further regulate the industry, India has drafted the Assisted Reproductive Technologies Bill to ensure the protection of the surrogate, the children, as well as the commissioning parents. Although the bill has yet to pass through India's parliament, it would at least put in place proper laws to give clarity and transparency to all the people involved. Nevertheless, despite the delay, surrogates have not stopped outsourcing their wombs.
You do hear stories about some people complaining that the surrogates are being exploited. We have 100 surrogates waiting in line for every surrogate who is selected.
It's a freedom of choice issue. And in the United States and in India, I talked to many surrogates who insisted that they love doing it. So it may be that there are women who have mixed feelings. Also, the surrogate who is carrying the babies for the couple I profiled, Rhonda and Jerry Weil, she was carrying twins. And she was pretty candid about the fact that she did have mixed feelings about it. She wanted to do it, but such as when she went in for the ultrasounds, she asked the doctor to turn the volume down on the machine because she didn't want to hear the heartbeats. She ended up having the babies naturally, but she really wanted to have a cesarean. It wasn't her choice. The doctors in charge make the choices. But she wanted a cesarean because she wanted it to feel like an operation, not like giving birth the way she had given birth to the children that were hers.
In 2014, India allowed the import of frozen embryos into the country after having banned them in 2011. This decision can be appealing to some prospective parents because a fertility doctor in their native country can perform the entire medical procedure. India only has to supply the surrogate. For Asian American Life, I'm Tinabeth Piña.
Tinabeth, what a fascinating story. But what surprises me is how come we haven't seen this story in mainstream media?
I think the story's been told. The reason why I think it hasn't been told as often as it should be in mainstream media is because fertility and surrogacy are notions that are usually kept hush-hush and under the table. Having undergone infertility treatments myself, I know that. My family was very shocked when I was sharing it with people. We did a special about it, and they're like, isn't that something that you should keep on the down low? And I'm like, no, that's how people learn. And so this is another option for couples if they're looking to have a family. This is one way that they can do it in an affordable fashion.
You mentioned that they make anywhere from $2,000 to $9,000. I mean, that's a huge range, $2,000, $9,000. Because they equate that to 2-year salary in India, what kind of pressure do the women feel from their families to do this?
It's twofold, I would think. I mean, it's the pressure of, will my child go to college because I can be a surrogate? It's the pressure of, are we going to get a new house or a new car? But I think what it boils down to is that these women, like Leslie Morgan-Steiner said in the piece, they're doing something men can't do. And for India, that's a big deal. It's a very paternalistic country. Like, I'm pretty much repeating what she said in the package, but that's something that makes them feel like they're a hero. I'm doing something that these men can do. I'm going to provide for, especially for my daughter, if I have a daughter, to give her one step up in life in that country.
And in your piece, you mentioned there's only 3 countries that allow this, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
And interestingly enough, in New York, surrogacy is not legal. You would have to go to New Jersey or go as far as India.
Really?
Yep.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yep.
New Jersey or India?
I know. Make your choice.
I find it amazing, though, by 2020, that projection of what the market will be. What was that number again?
2.5 billion?
2.5 billion. Wow, that's quite exponential growth.
It's a topic with chock full of controversy and complex, and it's just complex in every which way you look at it.
I'm Minnie Roh. Now that the holidays are over, what better way to decompress from all that stress than to spend a day at a Korean spa? But you don't have to catch the next flight to Seoul. There's one located just a stone's throw away from the Big Apple.
Just over the George Washington Bridge, tucked away on an industrial road, lies a hidden respite from everyday life. King Spa and Fitness is a 40,000 square foot center dedicated to stress relief and traditional healing. It's located in Palisades Park, New Jersey, and modeled after saunas that are immensely popular in South Korea, called 찜질방, which means heated bathhouse.
Ours is a Korean style spa, right? So we just do all the different room is all kind of from the Korea.
Manager Grace Pak says the original mission was to cater to Korean immigrants homesick for public baths where they could soak, socialize, and get scrubbed, a popular Korean custom of scrubbing off a layer of dead skin. But the concept gained traction with non-Koreans, which Pak says make up close to 40% of King Spa's clientele.
They don't know about the Korean spa, right? But after they have an experience, they just feel more like healing.
The baths and saunas are unisex, but the rest is co-ed. Once properly clad in the spa's uniform, patrons can spend the day getting lost in the 11 different rooms on site. Most of them, with the exception of the ice room, are heated to 90 degrees and above.
Yeah, pretty hot though. It's good hot. It's healing your pain though.
This sweltering amethyst room is touted to detoxify blood and aid in circulation. King Spa further claims that the semi-precious gem can treat toothaches, discomfort due to arthritis, and be used as a treatment for convulsions and nerve damage. Therefore, Pak says just being surrounded by the stone can have healing effects. The ancient Greeks also held amethyst in high regard, believing that it could protect its owner from drunkenness.
King Spa says all the different minerals in each room has a specific health benefit, which is based on traditional beliefs that go back hundreds of years.
You see the earth inside, this is what it is.
There's the energy soil room, which Pak says has anti-aging properties, or the infrared room.
So infrared goes into your bone. So good for if you have a rheumatism or back pain.
Koreans have long believed in the power of heat to extract impurities from the body. And you haven't felt hot until you've been inside this room, the 불한증막.
Okay, this is a really hot room, it's a sweating room. It's really special. And every in the morning, we're burning the oak tree like 3 to 4 hours.
The oak ashes emit heat that raises the temperature inside the 불한증막 to a whopping 200 degrees Fahrenheit. That's hot enough to bake these eggs, which, by the way, is a popular spa snack. Perhaps draping your body in a burlap sack to protect your skin from cooking inside this oven isn't exactly your idea of relaxation. But judging by the number of people heading in and out, it's definitely the hot spot in the spa.
Tomorrow when I wake up, I feel very good. I feel like good energy, my skin better.
So much different rooms here, so it helps your body. And if you have pain, it goes away.
And not just muscle aches and pains either. King Spa's website claims some of the compounds in their various rooms can be beneficial in fighting more serious diseases like rheumatism, diabetes, even cancer. But Western medical professionals like Dr. Liz Ramos-Genuino caution that these activities should always be done in conjunction with a physician's care.
We now know that when we're stressed, our cortisol levels go up. And having circulating cortisol in our bodies produces ill effects on our bodies. So I really think that resting and relaxing and doing stress reliever stuff is wonderful. But exercise, healthy diet, taking your medication, seeing your doctors, doing appropriate follow-ups are definitely still in order.
Whether or not you choose to believe that these rooms can heal what ails you, this much is indisputable. There is nothing like a relaxing day at the spa to deal with the hustle and bustle of a busy holiday season. I'm Minnie Roh for Asian American Life.
The Chinese American Exclusion Inclusion exhibit runs until April 19th here at the New York Historical Society. Be sure to stop by. I'm Ernabel Demillo for Asian American Life. We'll see you next time.